All right, let's dive in. Today, we're exploring this really powerful idea that our bodies have a kind of hidden control panel. We're going to look at the concept of psychic centers and how they might just be the key to mastering our minds and bodies from the inside out.
So, just imagine for a second, what if you had a control panel inside you? A way to manage your deepest urges, your anxieties, even your habits, not by sheer force, but through a kind of inner awareness. That's the powerful idea we're digging into today.
So at the very heart of this is the idea of duality. The source text we're looking at suggests that we're all made of two parts. On one side, you've got your material body, your physical self, the part driven by instinct and primal urges. But on the other hand, you have your conscious spirit. That's the source of your reason, your wisdom. The big question then is, how does the spirit actually control the body?
So how does that conscious, subtle part of you pilot the physical, material body? Well, the source suggests the answer is in the body's own internal control panel, the place where mind literally meets matter.
And that mechanism, the thing that translates these subtle spiritual forces into real physical action, is our endocrine system. Yeah, the very glands that produce our hormones. They're presented as the physical hardware that carries out the commands of our consciousness, for better or for worse.
And this quote just brilliantly illustrates that connection. It points out how our most intense emotions, fear, lust, jealousy, are direct expressions of our hormones. These aren't just abstract feelings floating around. They are real, tangible chemical events happening inside you. So if you want to control the emotion, you have to find a way to influence the gland. But how?
The answer to that how brings us to the absolute core of this explainer. The source material gives us a map of our inner network, a system that it calls the psychic centers.
These psychic centers, or kendras as they're called, are described as specific spots in the body where your conscious energy is way more concentrated. You can think of them as hotspots, or little command centers, that are directly wired to the major glands of your endocrine system.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. This is the map itself. We can see the Darshana Kendra, the center of intuition, right between the eyebrows, and it's linked to the pituitary gland. Then deeper in the head is the Jyoti Kendra, the center of enlightenment, connected to the pineal gland, and it continues down, the Vishuddhi Kendra in the throat with the thyroid, the Ananda Kendra, or center of bliss, in the heart region tied to the thymus, all the way down to the navel and the lower abdomen. Each center is basically a control knob for a specific gland.
Now, here's a really crucial point. Not all these centers are created equal. The source singles out the top two, the ones linked to the pituitary and pineal glands, as the master controls. These are basically the keys to gaining command over all those lower urges and impulses that are governed by the other glands.
Okay, so we've got a map of this inner network. The next logical question has to be, how do you actually use it? And that brings us to the key to control, the power of perception.
The technique itself is surprisingly simple, at least in concept. It's the act of perception. By focusing your conscious attention, your mind, directly on the physical location of these centers, the source claims you can activate and even regulate their corresponding glands. It's kind of like a form of targeted meditation.
And to explain how this could possibly work, the text actually points to modern science. For example, when it talks about the center of joy in the brain, it brings up endorphins, which is basically the body's own self-produced morphine. This is the chemical that blocks pain and creates feelings of bliss.
And here is the truly extraordinary claim. Through this practice of perceiving these centers, a person can supposedly learn to stimulate the production of these incredibly powerful chemicals on demand. I mean, think about it. Essentially, gaining conscious control over your own brain chemistry to either soothe pain or generate euphoria.
So now that we kind of get the how, let's talk about the why. If someone were to actually master this practice, what are the results? Well, the source describes nothing less than a fundamental transformation of the self.
The source lays out this three-step process of benefits. It starts with what it calls a decontamination of the psychic centers, which then leads to the stimulation of the center of joy, and finally results in the reinforcement of the body's vital energy, allowing it to flow freely.
I absolutely love the metaphor the source uses here. This decontamination is like a steam cleaning. The idea is that your focused attention acts like a purifying force, clearing out all the mental and emotional gunk, which allows your natural psychic brilliance to shine through. It's like wiping clean a dirty lantern.
And the results that are claimed? They're profound. This isn't just about feeling a little calmer. The text suggests you can achieve total mental balance, harmonize your entire neuroendocrine system, cut off negative emotions like greed and hate at their hormonal root, and ultimately bring about a true change of heart.
And to make this feel more tangible, the source gives this really striking anecdote. It describes a chain smoker who, after learning this technique, didn't just quit. His body's reaction fundamentally changed. He actually became nauseated by the very thing he used to crave. This is presented as proof of a change at the deepest possible level.
And the claims don't just stop at emotional and physical health. The source goes even further. It suggests that once these centers are fully purified, they can become gateways to extrasensory perception, or ESP, things like clairvoyance.
So, as we start to wrap this up, what we're really looking at is this fascinating framework. It takes these ancient philosophical ideas about inner energy centers and tries to map them onto our modern scientific understanding of the neuroendocrine system. The big takeaway is a proposed path to self-mastery, not through willpower alone, but through focused internal awareness.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. The source presents one interpretation of how ancient wisdom and modern biology might connect. It really makes you wonder, what other secrets, what other controls might be lying dormant inside our own bodies just waiting for us to discover them?